Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name is Jordan Brown, top producing agent here in the greater Austin, Texas area. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the NAR settlement, which rolled out on a national scale on August 17th, and what it means for buyers and sellers alike. Now, in this video, I'm not going to be talking about every single change. I'm going to be highlighting the top 2 changes, what it means, how it affects how we did business beforehand, and then post settlement, what that looks like. So first and foremost, how did we get here? What was the settlement about? And to keep it really short, there were a group of home sellers who sued the National Association of Realtors, saying that there was a conspiracy to increase commissions, more or less. And I completely disagree with how this settlement got rolled out, what the litigation involved was about, and I think it kind of missed the point of what the issue was. It's kind of one of those where one bad apple ruins the bunch. There's a lot of realtors who do things the right way, and it sounds like there were a few realtors who did not. And as a whole, the entire industry is going to undergo some changes, the biggest changes that we've seen to representation since the 90s. So what were some of the actual changes that are taking place? Let's talk about from the buyer side. So number one, a buyer representation agreement has to be signed by both the realtor and the prospective buyer clients before the realtor can start doing any real estate activities for you that aren't, the best way that I can put this is anything that's not Googleable, like not searchable on the internet. You start asking about comps in the neighborhood. You start asking about being able to go open doors and things like that. The realtor can no longer legally go and do that stuff for you without having some kind of representation agreement in place. Now, there's a few reasons why I think this is good. Let's talk about what happened before the settlement. What would this scenario look like? You'd be interested in, let's say, a property that you found online, and you call a realtor, you either Googled them or you have a relationship with them, you know of this person. So you would call them and say, hey, Jordan, this is Brian. I'm interested in looking at 123 Main Street, and I saw that you're a realtor. Would you mind meeting me at the property, opening up that door for me? And basically, the realtor would drop everything and immediately start going and performing agent duties by opening that door for you and talking to you about it. They'd be using the opportunity to build rapport in the hopes that you would then hire them or use them when you actually wanted to make an offer on a place. Now, the bad part about this, I've been burned by this before, is I would do this and I would go and show properties to a prospective client. I'm using that time, again, primarily to talk to them, learn about their interest. We're asking them about that specific home that we're in, if it's a good fit. And then hopefully they would want to use me to write up the offer. However, once they would do this, there was one scenario where I opened up 3 properties in one day. They told me a week later that they were going to wait until their situation changed and then they would be back in the market. And then through a crafty way, I found out that they actually bought with another agent. So basically they used me to perform real estate duties or actions and responsibilities. They used my intellect on the market and all the things that I bring to the table, but then used someone else to buy a property. So how could this have been avoided? Well, this change where you're going to have a representation agreement in place before the realtor starts doing work for you is a fantastic start. Basically, it's going to force the conversation of, instead of me immediately going to work for you, because no other respectable business person operates that way. You don't just start working for someone and not have the discussion on how you're going to be compensated or anything like that. So now this new change is going to be, we have to have a conversation and an agreement in place about what are our responsibilities to each other and how much am I going to be compensated either by you or by the seller for these things that I'm doing for you. And also for the buyer, this is a great thing because you get to hear what the realtor brings to the table. Not all realtors are made equal. In fact, the top 10% of realtors in any given place do 90+% of the business. There's been a lot of people who use their cousin, their niece, nephew, whatever, who just got licensed And now if you're partially going to be responsible, or if there's a possibility that you're going to have to pay that person's commission, well, that's a conversation that now needs to be had, and it's going to force you to really think about who you're hiring and what they really bring as a buyer's agent. So I'm actually excited for that change. And the reason that realtors avoided this conversation before the settlement was you knew, or you would assume, that you're going to get bailed out by the seller. The seller is likely paying something to attract for a buyer's agent to bring a buyer. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I do think that this is more semantics and paperwork. I do think that sellers in a buyer's market will still want to incentivize buyer's agents to get their house sold and bring a motivated, qualified, and educated represented buyer. I still think there is tons of value in that. Don't get it twisted. But you now will have to, as a buyer's agent and as a buyer, have this conversation with your agent about all the formal stuff. Like, hey, like, what are you going to do for me other than just open a door? And I'll tell you this, my fee that I've got is hundreds of thousands of dollars less than the total money that I've saved for my client. One thing that this is going to do is it increases transparency. It also makes it to where it's going to empower you to hire a realtor that matches the value that you're seeking as a buyer. Is this person really experienced and they know this neighborhood really well? Or are they really great with first-time home buyers? Or did they just get licensed and now you're possibly going to have to pay for that? Who knows? Now, the pro for being an agent here, again, we're not going to waste any of each other's time. If you don't want to work with me, that's fine. We're going to find that out on our first consult before I do any actual real work for you. So that's the first biggest change, is that a buyer's representation agreement will have to be in place before the agent will do any agent activities for you. Number two, the changes in the contract's verbiage makes it abundantly clear that commissions are 100% negotiable. I think beforehand, when we talk about the NAR lawsuit, there were people who were saying that something along the lines of, it's required of me to charge this. Totally not true. Real estate commissions have always been negotiable. And the unfortunate part about this is that before the settlement, there were still realtors doing things the right way and letting people know, hey, this is what I charge for this. And then if there was any pushback, like we could talk about a possible decrease in commission, but maybe I was also saying, well, I can absolutely discount my commission, but I'm not going to do this for you. Again, that's the back and forth of negotiation to find a win-win for everybody. Should buyers forego using a realtor in order to avoid the possibility of having to pay commissions? I do think that there is a portion of buyers, there already is, even before this settlement, of DIY home buyers, people who think that they can do it themselves. And here's the thing is, can you? Sure, you absolutely, you can do almost anything in this world, right? On your own. But there was a survey or an article that came out recently that last year, 11% of home buyers bought their home on their own. So 11%, 1 out of every 10 buyers bought their house on their own. But what they found is that 90% of those transactions took up to 3 times longer to complete. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a big education gap between the general public and what a realtor can provide for you as far as the insights on a contract, adhering to deadlines, and there's value in having a realtor in your corner. I won't go super far into detail on that, but like I mentioned earlier, I've negotiated way more than my fee in contributions or savings to my buyer clients. And here's the thing, you may still not, as a buyer, you still may not have to pay your buyer agency fee. So if you hire me at X%, me as your agent am going to try really hard to negotiate that within the contract and with the listing agent and seller to get that covered. Because my ultimate goal for you is to have the least amount of money out of pocket to get the absolute best deal on this property and on the sale. So in an absolute worst case scenario, yes, you are on the, technically you are on the line to cover my fee. Now here's the other portion of this. You could, as a realtor, if let's say you hire me at X%, right? And in order to make the deal work, I need to take X minus 1%. Well, if that's me, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do for my clients. I'm never gonna, I'm not the kind of person who's going to be a stickler over, being a few $100 or maybe $1,000 off or something like that on what my fee is and making it work for my client. My clients come first, always have, always will, even post settlement. So I'm not worried about that there. But I would say those of you who think that it's better off to forego being represented by a realtor in the name of looking better on paper to a seller, that goes against everything that you buying a home is about. Because then you're going in, when you have no representation, you now have the seller and the seller's agent working against you, just you. And so if you think that they're going to prioritize the things that are important to you, you're sadly mistaken. They are there to just solely do what's best for the seller. So I would highly suggest just to rethink that. It may not be as black and white as you think it is, and I still think that there's massive amounts of value that the right buyer's agent can bring to you as a buyer. So in summary, we've got number one change. The biggest change is going to be you have to, as a buyer, enter into an agreement, and this is a legal requirement. You legally have to enter into a representation agreement with your buyer's agent before they can even open a door for you. Any kind of agent-related activities, they are going to ask you to sign a document putting your relationship in black and white. Any realtor who is not doing this is not the kind of person that I want representing me, because it is a legal requirement. Not starting off on the right foot if step one is they're trying to find loopholes around legal proceedings. And then number two is the contract verbiage has been changed to put a big emphasis on the fact that real estate commissions are negotiable and are not set in stone or anything like that by law. From a seller's perspective, let's talk about if you're the seller. Right now, if you've ever sold a home, you've probably had this conversation where the realtor comes in and they say, I'm just going to throw a number out there, this is a very common scenario. I charge 6% for my listing services. Part of my plan as your realtor is, of that 6%, I'm going to split it in half and give 3% to a buyer's agent who brings a qualified, motivated, and educated buyer for your property. And once we close, they're going to get half of that commission. The problem with that is it's coupling the commission. It's basically under the illusion that the seller has to pay a buyer's agency, and you absolutely do not have to. I still think there's advantages to doing so, and I will still advocate for why that is important and definitely one strategy. But you as a seller can say, you always have been able to say this, but realtors have made it sound like you can't. You have the ability to say, I don't want to proactively offer any buyer agency commission. So now when you hire your realtor, you are hiring them just for their portion of the service. This will vary by state and by brokerage. At my brokerage, when you hire me, you are paying just for my service. However, that does not mean that the buyer's agent and the buyer on the other side are not going to include you paying their fee in the offer. But what this is going to do is it's going to make everything kind of on a case-by-case basis, right? Whether you're a buyer, you can say, hey, Jordan, I only want you to show me houses that are going to cover your full commission. Otherwise, I'm going to just write it into the offer what you need. That's always been the goal, is whatever you need as the client, that's what I'm going to try to advocate for with your offer. Then on the listing side, the offers that are coming in are going to look a little bit different now. It's not, maybe offer one is offering the same offer price and same terms as offer two, but offer one doesn't need you to pay 3% buyer agency commission. That's possibly thousands of dollars more to your bottom line with offer one as opposed to offer two. So hopefully this empowers both buyers, sellers, and realtors to have discussions about commissions, about what you need as a client. And is that something that how much do you value that? And if you have an honest conversation with your realtor about that, I have no doubts that representation is still highly important, and that when you find the right realtor, they're going to respect that. And this is more semantics and paperwork, as I mentioned earlier, than an actual change in proceedings. If anything, the people that this is going to negatively affect are realtors who cut corners and lie. I'm like just blatantly putting it out there. This is all new. It's all, I think it's new only from the standpoint of there was a certain way that we did things, or that people expected to do things prior to the settlement. And now with increased transparency and more options, things are just going to look a little bit different. I'm really not too worried about it. I don't think you should be, either as a consumer or as a seller. Hopefully this video has educated you just on a very macro scale what the changes are for both buyers and sellers. Bottom line is it empowers you to be in control, to make decisions that are going to benefit your objectives, and empower you to feel good about who you're hiring and who you're working with. If that's exactly what this video did for you, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to stay up to date with all my Austin area real estate content. I do tons of video tours, buyer seller tip videos, things like that. So if that's your jam, I'd love your subscription. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.